This week's big review is a new product from H2O. It's called Blendstrument Hybrid Pulses. It runs in the full version of Contact, and it's the follow-up to Blendstrument Motion Textures, which I covered in the very first Samplecast 10 weeks ago. This instrument is pulsing and rhythmic tones, and it concentrates on grimy, industrial and electronic elements. It's perfect for underscoring and kind of strange sound design pulses that you might have heard in a lot of modern film scoring. Blendstrument really bills itself as having infinite possibilities at the click of a button, and it's true, it does. You can randomise the whole instrument with just one click, or you can randomise individual elements as well. So the rhythms and textures that were produced when I hit the random buttons were kind of grimy electro beats and sort of soundscapes, but they've always got a pulsing quality to them. They've all got a lo-fi kind of bit crush quality, and in fact I would say the randomisation is a little bit heavy on that. I had to pull back the bit crushing and especially the phasing to make these sounds a little bit more usable. So the building blocks of Blendstrument are tonal and rhythmic patterns, and you've got two different what they call pods in the instrument, and each of these can have as many patterns stacked as you like, or you can assign one per pattern. And then you've got controls to blend between the pods, and you can add master effects onto that, which are featured on a separate page. If you've used the previous version of Blendstrument from H2O or any kind of randomisable looping hybrid cinematic libraries from other companies, you'll be pretty familiar with how this works. Obviously there's quirks within the interface which are unique to Blendstrument, but I wouldn't say there's anything, groundbreaking in terms of the interface here. Having said that, there's a lot to like within the product. The actual number of loops is huge. So it took me a few hours, to be honest, to go through all of them. The fact that they're stackable as well is amazing. You can really load as many loops as you want and they can all play at the same time. You can get some cacophonous sounds doing this. There's also a reversed patch which uses the same instruments and loops from the normal patch in Blendstrument, but it plays them backwards while still applying the same tempo syncing and looping options. This is really fun. It adds a whole new lease of life to the loops that are on board. The Master Effects panel is pretty good. It's not just an add-on. You'll find a lot of interesting functions on there, including the Chaos engine for a lot of the effects. And I particularly like the Transform function, which is sort of a convolution reverb, but not a reverb. You'll see how it sounds like on some of the demos. I also really appreciated the option to be able to reset the master phasing, gating, pulsing, bit crushing, ADSR levels and things like that on the master control of Blendstrument. As really these had been randomised when you press the whole instrument randomisation button, but they're a bit overboard for my liking. Unless you're doing really kind of industrial soundtracks, the settings are pushed a bit too far, so it's good to be able to reset and hear exactly what the loops sound like without any of those extra effects put onto them. There are things I thought could be improved with the library. It's all quite robotic and lo-fi. Now I know that's the point, but it would have been nice to have a little bit of a break from that, have a few different textures, some which could be mangled and be able to be adjusted yourself without automatically sounding lo-fi. The randomisation did throw up some pretty odd sounds on occasions, and some which were very low in volume and some which were screaming out of the speakers really high in volume, so perhaps that could be standardised. I know randomisation is something which is always going to be a little bit tricky with these kind of instruments, but maybe a little bit of finessing of that would have been great. One thing I did find a problem was the layer assignments. They're not really explained that well in the manual. They're blanked out on the interface by default, and I'm not really surprised about that because it's a little bit tricky to get your head around what they're actually doing. So perhaps a little bit more explanation in the documentation could have been improved upon. But overall, I think Blendstrument Hybrid Pulses by H2O, it's a pretty good instrument, and you can get days and days of fun just by hitting those randomisation buttons and playing with the master effects. So check it out if you're looking for industrial, grimy soundtrack modules. Thank you so much for watching. That's just a small taste of the Samplecast, a weekly podcast and YouTube show for sample library geeks and plugin enthusiasts. You can find out more information at thesamplecast.com. Don't forget to subscribe.